and you are watching NewsX World. Israeli military says Iran fired 6 missile waves, killing 4, as US President Donald Trump announced again on his Truth Social, re-emphasizing a ceasefire to end the 12-day war. While Iran denies a final deal, AFP reports fresh explosions rocked Tehran hours before the truce. Gaza's civil defense says Israeli forces killed 21 and wounded around 158 seekers with bullets and tank shells near a central distribution site, according to spokesman Mahmoud Basal via AFP. Ukrainian drone hits apartment buildings near Moscow, injuring 2, while Russian strikes kills 3 in Sumy, according to TASS and Ukrainian officials. Meanwhile, Starmer and Zelensky have announced military production deal in London. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer commits to NATO's 5% defense spending target by 2035 ahead of the Hague summit. Meanwhile, France's Macron held talks in Norway amid Arctic tensions, according to media reports. US judge has blocked President Donald Trump's attempt to expel international students from Harvard amid ongoing legal battles and funding clashes between Trump administration and the Ivy League institution, according to media reports. Thai Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra says cabinet reshuffle is settled now, despite recent withdrawal by a key partner following leaked phone call. Meanwhile, Thailand closes borders with Cambodia amid escalating tensions over deadly border clashes, according to media reports. Potential presidential candidate Colombian Senator Uribe has now undergone his 4th surgery after being shot in the head at a June 7th campaign event in Bogota, his wife confirmed on social media. However, he still remains in critical condition, according to media reports. Australia's Safety Commissioner is urging the government to reject a proposed exemption for YouTube from a world's first social media ban for under 16s, set to begin in coming December 10th, according to media reports. US President Donald Trump has confirmed that a ceasefire between Israel and Iran is now in effect. Taking to Truth Social, Trump declared, "The ceasefire is now in effect. Please do not violate it," urging both sides to stand down after nearly 2 weeks of escalating conflict. Iran's state TV reported that a ceasefire has been imposed on Israel following multiple waves of Iranian attacks. Israel has also publicly agreed to the ceasefire proposal. Israeli forces struck residential buildings in northern Iran's Gilan province early today, killing 9 people, according to the deputy governor speaking to Tasnim News. In response, Iran fired 6 waves of missiles at Israel within just over an hour, killing at least 5 people and injuring 20 more in Beersheba, reports the Jerusalem Post. Rescue teams pulled several people from the rubble as medics treated victims with limb injuries, cuts, and trauma. Gaza rescuers say Israeli forces killed 21 people waiting for aid. The victims were reportedly in a crowd waiting to receive humanitarian assistance in Gaza. Rescue teams confirmed the deaths, blaming Israeli forces for the attack. The Israeli military has yet to comment on this incident. This comes amid ongoing clashes between Israeli forces and Hamas. The situation remains tense, with both sides continuing to exchange strikes. Now we move on to our other story, and ahead of the NATO summit in Hague, Russian drone attacks have killed over 3 in an attack in Ukraine's northern region of Sumy. As per reports, there was a child among the 3 killed. There are also reports of at least 3 people wounded in the attack too. The fresh attacks in Sumy come a day after Ukraine said Russia carried out dozens of drone and missile strikes on its territory, killing 10 people in the capital, Kyiv. Meanwhile, Russia has said that a drone had targeted a residential building in Moscow overnight, wounding 2 people, a pregnant woman included. As the war between Russia and Ukraine continues to escalate, the diplomatic efforts to end the 3-year war have stalled. With the last direct meeting between Kyiv and Moscow almost 3 weeks ago and no follow-up talks scheduled. The reports of the fresh attacks come amid Zelensky's participation in 2-day NATO summit in The Hague, which is scheduled to start later today. Now we have Dr. Gilbert Doctorow joining us live for this news. He's Russian affairs expert joining us live from Brussels. Thank you, Mr. Doctorow, for joining us today. And what do you suggest that what is coming next for these ongoing strikes between Ukraine and Russia, and also no talks or no scheduled talks ahead?
In international affairs, everything is connected or interconnected. And what is happening now in the Ukraine-Russia war is impacted by what has been happening in the Middle East. We know that Russia has profited by the distraction for the United States of this higher priority conflict in the Middle East, and it has withdrawn a large part of its anti-aircraft systems, and it has stopped the flow of military materiel to Kiev. That is what people talk about. What they don't talk about is the new aggressiveness in the Russian attacks on Ukraine. The attacks in the past week on Kiev in particular were far more devastating and caused many more casualties than any prior Russian attacks. So it is with Sumy. Sumy is a border town. It is the city very close to the Russian border, from which the Ukrainians staged their invasion of Kursk province, which is just across the border. The Russians have made it publicly known that they are creating a buffer zone, at least 15 kilometers in width, between taking over or neutralizing Ukrainian territory that was being used as staging grounds for attack on Russian civilian settlements on the Russian side. The attack on Sumy that you have described is part of that operation. And yes, the Russians make great emphasis on their concentrating firepower against military targets. Nonetheless, as we know, there always is civilian suffering because how precise you can strike, particularly with artillery, does not rule out the possibility of damage to residences and so forth. So the deaths that you described were not the purpose of Russian attack, but they were a result, a consequence of their strikes in Sumy for the purpose of weakening that center, degrading its military status, and preparing possibly for a Russian takeover of Sumy if they so decide.
And Mr. Doctor, as civilian casualties increasing on both sides, Russia claims a drone targeted a building in Moscow, and now does this signal a new phase where the war could become more mutually destructive on civilian fronts?
But still, let's put this in perspective. The relevant perspective is Israel's conduct of its war on Gaza, which is genocidal and which has produced more than 55,000 civilian deaths. In the last 8 days or so, when the war in Gaza was scaled back by Israel, note that, scaled back because of their concentration on the conflict with Iran, there still were 500 civilian deaths recorded. Israel has daily killed more people who are waiting for food distribution in a land that is now in advanced hunger, advanced famine. Israel is killing more civilians each day, many more, than the numbers that you've cited for Russian activities in their war in Ukraine. These are incomparable. And yet, here we are, our mainstream media are reporting on Russian barbarity, how cruel it is, Mr. Starmer, with respect to the loss of life of civilians in Ukraine. And they are relatively quiet, if not absolutely silent, about the many times greater destruction of civilian infrastructure and civilian lives going on in Gaza, the West Bank, and in the recent strikes of Israel in Iran.
And now, building on the fact that NATO meeting is going to take place tonight, what message is Moscow sending by timing of this escalation just hours before NATO leaders gather in The Hague? And are these strikes intended to coincide with the NATO summit to test or maybe dilute the alliance unity?
I don't think the Russians have to do anything to dilute the alliance. The alliance is collapsing in front of our eyes. The biggest event of the last couple of days has been the outright refusal of Spain to sign up to the increased contributions of NATO member states to armaments, to arms. That outright refusal is quite shocking. It's also backed up by other developments showing the loss of authority of NATO. The Japanese are not coming to it. The idea of an Asian extension of NATO was just delivered a heavy blow by the Japanese refusal to attend. So NATO has its own problems, its inconsistencies, and I would say the utter nonsense of Mr. Rutte's speech yesterday in preparation for this meeting, in which he was calling upon the countries of NATO to contribute to a vast improvement in their air defenses, making Europe safe from attack, particularly from that nasty neighbor to the east, Russia, which is the greatest threat to security, according to Mr. Rutte. That assumes that his audience is mindless, that they're not paying attention to what's going on in the Middle East, where the notion of an air defense against hypersonic missiles is utter nonsense. Europe, like Mr. Trump with his Golden Dome, is being asked to put up enormous amounts of money for a military strategy that is hopeless in providing any security. Therefore, NATO's problems are NATO's own problems. They are not in any way exaggerated or influenced by anything that Moscow is doing.
And now that there might be some chance, even though you said you showed some pessimism towards NATO, could NATO countries use this summit to announce a change in policy, such as maybe providing longer range weapons or air defense systems, more of them to Ukraine?
If NATO continues on its present path, I predict that in 5 years won't exist. The internal conflicts within the European Union over foreign policy, which is the determinant of military policy, are growing in front of our eyes. The famous 18th package of sanctions against Russia was just doomed by the veto of Slovakia and Hungary. If this is not a Russian intervention, it is common sense among European nations who are seeking to defend their citizens from policies made in Brussels, which are destructive of the security and the economy of European member states.
Thank you very much, Gilbert Doctorow, for joining us today and sharing your expertise as Russian affairs expert. Now we have a breaking news following the confirmation by Iran, Israel and United States on the ceasefire. German Chancellor Merz has posted on X welcomes Trump's call for sequential ceasefire. On X, he also said that appealed to both Iran, Israel to follow this call. He has also said that we'll discuss how to stabilize situation on sidelines of NATO summit. Meanwhile, Israeli forces struck residential buildings in northern Iran's Gilan province earlier today, killing 9 people, according to the deputy governor speaking to Tasnim News. In response, Iran fired 6 waves of missiles at Israel within just over an hour, killing at least 5 people and injuring 20 more in Beersheba, reports the Jerusalem Post. Rescue teams pulled several people from the rubble as medics treated victims with limb injuries, cuts, and trauma. Now we have guests joining us for this discussion. Ali M. Abushbak, he's an independent Palestinian researcher, live from Cairo, Egypt. Thank you, Ali, for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. How is Trump's unilateral ceasefire announcement being received in the Arab world? Is it seen as premature or as a power move without backing?
Thank you, Osama, for having me. I think the news today morning is surprising, and it's a good news that announcing about the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Despite that, Arakshi, that the foreign minister of Iran, he confirmed on his social media that they are going through the ceasefire, but also he mentioned that they can't trust America as a mediator between Iran and Israel. And he mentioned that he discussed the ceasefire between Iran and Israel with his friend and the country friend, which means that they discussed it the day before yesterday with Russia, or yesterday with Russia and with China. Also today morning, despite the ceasefire has been applied, Iran media news, they release a news that at the last moment of the ceasefire have been applied, there is one of nuclear scientist has been targeted, Mohammad Rida. I guess the situation is going to come in the region and in the area. Also, I guess both of sides, Israel and Iran, has been going through the several of casualties and destroyed. Yesterday night, I was talking to one of my friends. He's from Iran. As you know that since the beginning of the wave of escalation or the conflict between Iran and Israel, the internet service is distributed in Iran and stopped, and rarely you can communicate with anyone from Iran. So he mentioned that there is a several of destruction in Iran and several of destroyed building in Iran. And he mentioned that the government has this airstrike deeply impacted the government and Islamic Revolutionary Guard, as well as in Israel. The same things we have witnessed several of footage and videos that released from people or civilian journalism in Israel, and we have seen that the level and the size of destruction in Tel Aviv as well as Akka, Yafa, and yesterday Be'er Saba. So we are witnessing a good moment that they are going to apply the ceasefire, and there is a negotiation. There is a discussion about going back to negotiation table between America and Israel. So I guess this is a good news also.
And Ali, in Egypt, where you are, and also across the Arab world, are the UN, Europe, Russia, or Turkey seen as neutral players or as strategically tilted towards one side, and can they maybe mediate further negotiations between or coordinate ceasefire between the two countries?
Uh, you mean between Russia, between Iran and Israel, or between Iran and America?
Pardon, I wasn't clear about that. So between Iran and between Iran and U.S.
Uh, I guess it's too early to talk about. And I mean, you are talking about negotiation, about the nuclear negotiation. It's too early to talk about it. That's the most important things now. We are talking about the war to stop the conflict between Iran and Israel, but also, in my opinion, that Iran is not going to trust any Western country, and it's not going to trust America. Despite that, until and unless Russia, it will not be in the frame. After also, especially after the American targeting the nuclear function in Iran, and after American giving the green light to Israel to attack Iran last week. I guess these things, it will not happen until analysts to figure out it. This is in my opinion. Now there is a trust issue between Iran and Western country, and Iran and America.
And
I guess Turkey will not be. Yeah.
oh, please, you continue.
Yeah. Also.
Okay.
Okay. I guess Turkey will not be one of the major player in these things, because especially Turkey has no power, and Turkey has no rule in the area. Maybe Russia would be, or China would be one of the significant part, as we have seen in the previous time. This is what I do believe.
And do you, now looking at the regions, other regions in around Arab world, do you expect groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and bordering Israel to respond militarily or symbolically in light of the continued strikes, or are they waiting to see if this ceasefire holds?
If you repeat the question again, please. I couldn't hear you properly.
Yes. So my question is that, do you expect groups like Hezbollah, who have been clashing with Israeli forces often, will they respond militarily or symbolically in light of the continued strikes? Yeah.
I guess Hezbollah and Israel and Iran's proxy in the area got diminished during this 2 years of war, especially Gaza, Iran, Gaza, Lebanon, and after the fuel, or the Bashar al-Assad had been filled from Syria, the major, or the crucial base for Iran in the area, it was Syria. And after the regime has been collapsed and destroyed, I guess Iran has a new plan to think about its proxy in the area. Hezbollah, I guess, diminished, and we have witnessed during this previous wave of escalation. There is no one statement from Hezbollah's leader. I guess now Hezbollah has no rule in the area. Ansarullah al-Houthi, they show many times to their ability to respond, but also we didn't see any response from Ansarullah al-Houthi, because they know that according to one of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, he mentioned that their proxy, they asked them to join and participate in this wave of violence and conflict, but Iran consider it as their duty, or they consider it as their responsibility to respond to Israel's attack on Iran. So Iran has a new plan about its proxy. As I mentioned, that Hamas diminished in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon diminished. Syria has a new regime, and this new regime is not supporting Iran. And it seems that going through normalization, the relation with Israel has a no issue. And
Ali,
we have witnessed, yeah.
Ali, I'll have to cut you off, sorry, in the middle. We have another news. Thank you for joining, Ali Abushbak. And now we move on to our next story. The head of the World Economic Forum has said that the world is facing the most complex geopolitical situation, warning that the escalating wars turmoil is impacting global growth. WEF President and CEO Borge Brende said this right ahead of a meeting of the multilateral forum in the northern Chinese city of Tianjin. Officials, including Singaporean Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, will attend this week's WEF meeting on the port of city of Tianjin, known colloquially as the Summer Davos. The meeting comes hard on the heels of the United States' involvement in the Iran-Israel conflict and follows months in which the global economy has been battered by a tariff war launched by US President Donald Trump. Now we move on to our next story. 3 Democratic lawmakers introduced a war powers resolution on Monday to limit President Trump's military actions against Iran. This comes after U.S. strikes targeted Tehran's nuclear facilities. However, Trump's Republican majority in Congress makes it unlikely for the resolution to pass. In retaliation, Iran hit a U.S. base in Qatar, the conflict which escalated when Israel attacked Iran on June 13 has raised regional tensions. Democrats argue Trump acted without congressional approval, violating constitutional principles. House Speaker Mike Johnson disagrees, saying it's not the time for such a resolution. Trump's allies argue he acted to eliminate a nuclear threat from Iran, but Democrats claim the strike aimed at regime change. They criticize Trump's decision-making process, accusing him of impulsive actions without thorough deliberation. The resolution, if passed, would restrict the president's ability to engage in further military actions without congressional consent. Now we stay in the U.S. The U.S. Supreme Court has cleared the way for President Trump's administration to resume deportations of migrants to third countries. In a 6-3 ruling, the justices reversed a lower court's order that required migrants to have a chance to present risks they might face upon deportation. The ruling applies to 8 migrants from Myanmar, South Sudan, Cuba, Mexico, Laos, and Vietnam. While the Trump administration hailed the decision as a victory, critics argue it exposes migrants to potential torture and death. The ruling furthers Trump's tough immigration stance. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.